Hey everybody, it's the Pick Six Podcast, post-election edition. Just like we're waiting for the decision on who's going to be the president for the next 4 years, we're still waiting on Nebraska Northwestern. And I think we're going to have a game. And that's good news after last week's cancellation with Wisconsin. The Badgers canceled again against Purdue, which sets up a really interesting opportunity for Nebraska to be right in the mix of things if they can beat the Wildcats this weekend, a frequent nemesis, a team that plays a lot of close games with Nebraska. Hello, everyone. I'm Sam McKewon along with Evan Bland. We're coming to you on a Thursday in Lincoln, Nebraska, and things are, it looks like it appears to be a green light for a football game. We'll hear from Scott Frost later today, but we're going to record this before that because I think we have a pretty good sense of how things are going to go with that conversation. Nebraska's ready to go to Northwestern. Northwestern seems to be good to go as well. We're going to be going to Chicago and going to another empty stadium, and Evan's sitting in front of it. Evan, how you doing?
Hey, man. Yeah, doing well. Enjoying these last few days of warm weather, wrapping my brain around the fact that Nebraska hasn't played a home game yet, and it's in November. And, kind of ready for a road trip, actually. As much as we've been working out of our homes and doing stuff virtually, I wouldn't want to do it every weekend, but the prospect of a trip to Chicago actually is kind of appealing right now.
Yeah, the first trip to Ohio State was fraught with a little whatever because, A, it was the first trip of the year, and B, first time I've been on a plane since the pandemic started, so it was a little unique. But this will be a drive. This will be a true road trip. So we'll see how it goes in Chicago. We're going to talk a little bit about, obviously, the game, Nebraska Northwestern. We'll also talk just a little bit about signing day coming up. Some of the things that are going to be going on there. There's an early signing period next week in November. So obviously a number of teams will be doing stuff with that. Football team won't. But we'll talk about the newest recruit, the newest commit that committed over the weekend and where Nebraska goes from here, because I know Evan's going to do a little bit of a story on just where Nebraska is in recruiting, which is harder to follow it's been harder to follow, but I can't say that I've missed figuring out who all the official visitors were going to be over the weekend. I don't miss that. Want to let everybody know that our sponsor is Team Schwalbach. They are a family-owned all-state insurance agency with 4 licensed insurance pros saving thousands of Nebraska Husker fans money. They sell home, auto, life, and flood insurance across Nebraska, and they also insure all the big boy toys. Motorcycles, boats, RVs, off-road vehicles. You might want to get in your last motorcycle ride of the year before the Husker game on Saturday, because I think it's going to be a pretty nice day in Nebraska. If you had your roof replaced in the last 5 years, give Daryl Schwalbach, Kyle Schwalbach, Nancy Mossick, or Kyle Murdoch a call at 402-590-5200. They're going to help you save a bundle. Free, no obligation insurance reviews and quotes are going to make sure all their fellow Nebraska fans are properly protected. You can contact Team Schwalbach at 402-590-5200. That's 402-590-5200 or www.nebraskaallstate.com. That's www.nebraskaallstate.com. Team Schwalbach, the Schwalbach Agency. We are thankful for their sponsorship. Okay. Nebraska Northwestern, most of the conversation this week was just about actual football. It wasn't about COVID tests or protocols or any of those things. This week was just mostly talking to guys about football. There's a little bit of election talk because obviously this week is the election. But for the most part, we just talked about a football game, and it's a big one. Nebraska has a chance to really put its foot into the Big Ten West division, but it has to win this game. If it loses this game, it's in a very, very tough spot because Nebraska will have already had 2 losses. They'll be at 0-2. Northwestern will be at 3-0, and Northwestern would have to lose 3 times for Nebraska and Nebraska would have to win out for Nebraska to win the West. So this is kind of an elimination game for Nebraska. If they win it, they're all the way in it. And it'll be interesting to the finish because, remember, Nebraska does not play Wisconsin. If Northwestern wins it, oh boy, they don't have a lot of obstacles left. They have maybe Wisconsin and Purdue, and that's about it because I think Illinois and Minnesota and Iowa are going to be in for a rough go this particular year because they're already 0-2. And then so Northwestern, if they win this game, that's a big, big feather in their cap. It'll be a big – and Nebraska has to win it. basically has to win this game to stay in the West race. Otherwise, it's going to become very, 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 very hard to win the division. As it stands right now, going into the game, they have a good chance if they win it. So, Evan, what have you kind of gathered from this week about what Northwestern is good at, why it's challenging for Nebraska, and maybe what are some keys to the game?
Yeah, well, I think the big change from Northwestern teams of the past is that they do have a new offensive coordinator, Mike Bajakian, who came over from Boston College. And so what Eric Chenander, Nebraska's D coordinator said, and what we've kind of seen on film from Northwestern is they're going maybe a little more up tempo than they have in the past under their previous coordinator, Mike McCall. A little bit more pro style mixed in. They're running 70% of the time offensively. They like those play action looks to the tight end, but they're going to pound it. I mean, that's just kind of how that side of it's going to go. And then, defensively, linebackers are the strength of that team. Patty Fisher, Chris Bergen, Blake Gallagher. Those are three guys. I think they've got 86 combined career starts. So clearly the strength of that side of the ball. Those are guys that stay in their gaps, don't get out of position, make mistakes, things like that. So I think in a lot of ways it comes down to what we've seen with these two teams a lot over the last few years, where Northwestern kind of is what it is. Average on offense, no huge playmakers, but doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And then a little bit above average defensively, can force a few turnovers, but mostly just waits for you to make a mistake. And so, Nebraska on the other side has always had the talent advantage in terms of stars and recruiting rankings, but it's the same story for them too. They got to limit penalties. They got to not make silly turnovers, things of that nature. And I think in the bigger context, you're talking about the Big Ten West, Sam. It's been interesting for me because I think you can go down the list in the Big Ten West and see some pretty fatal flaws in just about everybody in that division so far. Illinois can't stop anybody. Minnesota can't stop anybody. Iowa's 0-2. Purdue's 2-0, but will they get Rondale Moore back? Who knows? And Illinois hung with them, like Wisconsin and its COVID situation. So to me, this is kind of that last game of, Northwestern, which has looked pretty good, 2-0, Nebraska, which we don't really know a lot about. They played Ohio State, and that's it. So we don't really know kind of how far they've come from some of the bugaboos of recent years. And so, you kind of laid out why this is important for the Big Ten race. I think this is for the Big Ten West. I think this is really interesting just to learn about these two teams. This game to me says a lot about how we view this division here the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm. Northwestern is number one in the Big Ten in turnover margin. Mind you, that's only 2 games, but they are +4. They are number one in the Big Ten in interceptions. They have 6. They've only given it up 3 times, which is in 2 games, not a ton. So they're good there. They're number 3 in the league in penalties per game, which is also good if you're looking at why they've had success. They're number 2 in time of possession, which is also very good. They are 3rd in third down conversion rate. They lead the league with 5 fourth down conversions. They're 5 for 5. They're 100% on fourth down so far. In the last 3 seasons, so 2017, 2018, and 2019, Northwestern has led the Big Ten in fourth down attempts. Last year they led by 2. In 2018 they led by 3, and then in 2017 they led by 12. So what you begin to see about Northwestern is a profile emerges, and that profile either leads to really close games that are breathtakingly annoying to lose if you're on the losing end, or if things go right for your team, you can win against Northwestern by 14, 21, 28 points. And some of that is rooted in, can you get them off the field on third down, and can you get them off the field on fourth down? Because they're going to do a lot of that. They don't have a lot of explosive plays. I'm going to look at this here really quickly, but through 2 games, I think Northwestern has, let's see, Yeah, they only have 7 plays of 20 or plus yards, which isn't a lot, especially considering they played Maryland in game 1. Maryland isn't any good on defense. So that to me is pretty notable that they don't have a ton of those. So they're not gonna throw it over you. They're not necessarily gonna break an 80-yard run, but what they're gonna do is piece together 13, 14, 15, 16 play drives, grind you down. And I'm not sure there's anything more demoralizing than a 15 play drive where a team converts 2 fourth downs and takes up 7 minutes of the clock and scores a touchdown on you, because it's just demoralizing because your defense had so many opportunities to get them off the field and didn't do it. And so one of the keys for me in this game is going to be Nebraska's defense's ability to get Northwestern off the field.
Yeah, I agree, because that sets up everything else for them. I mean, if they're running the ball well, they're killing clock. It sets up play action, and it just sets up the rest of the game for them. But it's interesting, their style of offense, I think, too, because as much as we talked last week about Wisconsin, had that game been played, that would have been a really interesting test for Nebraska's front seven, kind of building off that Ohio State game. Could they kind of, string a few games together there where they were being gap sound, or they were being physical in the trenches, that sort of thing, stuff that we hadn't seen a lot of in the last couple of years. And in a lot of ways, Northwestern kind of provides another opportunity for that. Not quite in the same way as Wisconsin, but pretty close.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, I think, pretty interesting. And then, offensively for Nebraska, to me, and I know fans don't like to maybe hear this, to me, this is a game where they're going to maybe try to hit the edges quite a bit, because if you have a strong linebacking group like Northwestern does, this seems like the kind of game where different screens, passes to the sidelines, things like that. If you're blocking well out there, that's maybe where Nebraska can make some hay and start moving the ball a little bit. And I think, as is the case for a lot of games for them this year, that O-line. I mean, they're going to have to rely on that offensive line. Nebraska is. Northwestern's D-line's not all that experienced. Their linebackers are good, like we said, but to me, it's going to be kind of pounding it when you can, working the edges, as we saw against Ohio State. Nebraska's either unable or unwilling to go too deep downfield in terms of passes, and this doesn't seem like the game you maybe want to do that too much anyway. So I would be looking for the no block, no rock mantra to maybe start popping up here this weekend.
Yeah, I think it is a good point that you want to try to hit. I know against Northwestern last year, Nebraska hit a shovel pass, obviously, for a big gain, and I think they had a shotgun draw play that went for a touchdown with Wandale Robinson, and he kind of hit the hole the right way and was able to accelerate, and Nebraska got some blocks, and that was probably those two plays were a huge reason why Nebraska won. And then, of course, the play in the fourth quarter when Vedral hit Wandale again on that sort of switch route, sort of a slot fade play, and that was the reason Nebraska won. So yeah, you're going to have to earn it against Northwestern. The previous year, Nebraska moved the ball quite well against the Wildcats, but made some mistakes. I mean, they made a couple of crucial errors in that loss. It's obviously fair to focus on the final drive of regulation when Northwestern tied it and went 99 yards to do it. And you can question a lot of things about Nebraska's execution on that drive. But there were opportunities earlier in the game to finish it off, too. I mean, Nebraska was up, and they have Jerron Woodyard, and they're trying to run a deep route to the end zone, and he was covered, and it was picked off, and that was a big play. And there were a couple of opportunities where Nebraska really had a chance to just put it away, and they weren't able to do it. So that's happened a number of times in Nebraska in this series. Happened in 2017 as well. Nebraska was controlling that game against Northwestern. People forget that. That's the no reasonable reason game from Bob Diaco. Nebraska's up 7, and they're going in to take a 10-point lead. They're down inside, I think, the Northwestern 25, and Tanner Lee throws a pick. There was no reason to throw the football there. And if Nebraska hits that field goal, they may win that game. And that wouldn't have changed the trajectory of Mike Riley's career. Okay, they would have finished 5-7 instead of 4-8, but it would have been a win. Conversely, there's been times when, and this has usually happened in Evanston, where Nebraska they can get some distance between themselves and Northwestern, because Northwestern doesn't pick up those fourth downs. And it sets Nebraska up in really good field position. That's happened more than once over the course of the series, where you feel like it's going to be a tight game, and then Nebraska kind of pushes it out a little bit because they're able to hit some plays and sort of put it out of reach. So, I don't know exactly how it's going to look. It would be good to see Omar Manning on the trip, Evan. I know that. And I think it'd be good to see if he can stretch that defense and maybe catch one over those guys, because I think you do need to take a few shots during the game, and if you have a receiver who's able to do that, then try it. And I think somewhere in this game, Nebraska's going to have to get 3 or 4 plays over 30 yards, because I don't know that Nebraska can go 15 plays and 80 yards and just sort of chunk it down the field. They need to hit some big plays.
Yeah, and I think you made that point last week. When you look around the Big Ten, I mean, you can see different teams have these kind of game-changing receivers where you can throw it up and they make some kind of a big play, and that can turn things around. And maybe Omar Manning is that guy for Nebraska, but right now there just doesn't seem to be a lot of margin for error in the passing game for Nebraska. I mean, the guys just aren't getting a lot of separation. So, we'll see in that regard. But I think the other thing about Nebraska playing Northwestern right now that's so interesting is kind of, as we've said too over the years, where Northwestern kind of, it is what it is, and it really it's I think a perfect measuring stick kind of game for Nebraska, because for the most part Northwestern kind of keeps that flat line in terms of what it is and how it goes about its business, and so if Nebraska again can avoid those big mistakes, if they can maybe start putting some big plays together like this offense believes it's capable of, then suddenly this home stretch of the season gets pretty interesting. But if they kind of backslide into their old ways, they lose this game. The conversation for the rest of the year changes a lot from Big Ten West race and what that could turn into, and it turns back to, all right, well, how are they going to overcome this mistake and that mistake, and how can they address this, and what does it mean for 2021? I mean, it's a big swing game, I think, when you look at the narrative of what this season's going to be all about.
Yeah, it's very fair. I think Northwestern might be the best team that they play here on out, other than maybe Penn State. Haven't been impressed with Illinois at all. Minnesota's got a good offense but a bad defense, and Iowa's not. They're not the Iowa that you've seen the last 3 or 4 years. And so, I think if Nebraska goes in there and they play their very best game, I do think they win. I think they have a little bit more talent and maybe a little bit more explosiveness on offense, and that'll be the difference. But you can also see this kind of game where if Nebraska goes in there, and you hate to pick on one guy, but quarterback Adrian Martinez cannot have 2 turnovers in this game. You just can't do it. Right. And that's going to be a key, is the quarterback, and I'll put Luke in there too. The quarterbacks cannot turn the ball over 2 or 3 times against this team and expect to win. It's really hard to make happen.
It's really interesting because we just don't know a lot about Nebraska. They played once in the last almost full year against a college football playoff type of team in Ohio State. We just don't know, like, how much have all those off-season Zooms, and how much has, as Scott Frost said, the record for most practices with one game, how much does all that pay off? Like, we're going to find out. And I think this is the perfect game to find out, again, because Nebraska's had the talent over the years. It's just been the self-inflicted wounds that have hurt them. And so, yeah, I think it's the perfect game. It's the perfect time to learn a lot. And I think we are going to learn a lot about the team this weekend.
Yeah, I feel like we do know quite a bit about Nebraska's penchant to turn the ball over with its quarterbacks. Sure. It's been an issue for a long time. It is not. It really hasn't been easily resolved. Maybe in 2016 they were able to limit Tommy Armstrong on some stuff and have him sort of limit some of his turnovers, but they've struggled at that position in terms of they get a lot of explosive plays from the quarterback and they get a lot of turnovers. And they have to find a way to resolve that. In 2018, Nebraska probably outplays Northwestern. The difference is Martinez throws 2 interceptions, and he loses a fumble that turns into a strip sack that turns into a touchdown for Northwestern. And that's the stuff you can't do. It's very hard to overcome those things. And then there was later in the game, there was a bad snap. So those are the when I'm looking at how do you win this game, show me what the turnovers are going to look like. If that number is a goose egg for Nebraska, I love Nebraska's chances of winning the game.
Yeah.
They didn't turn it over last year against Northwestern. It was an ugly, ugly game, and they still won it because they got the one turnover in that game that you needed. Lamar Jackson got a pick late, and they turned that into a field goal, and they won. And I think this is one of those games where if it's a choice between making a spectacular play that also risks a turnover, turn the play down and do not turn it over. We'll see, though. We'll see. That's hard. I think that's hard for Nebraska. This program, this DNA, is to go for it. And, that's the key is when you're playing Northwestern, you're going to have to use a tennis analogy. There'll be so many opportunities for Nebraska to hit winners in this game, but they've got to make sure that they don't hit unforced errors. That's the key is they have the chance to hit more winners, but they also have the chance to hit more errors because Northwestern's not going to hit a lot of errors, or they haven't historically. So I guess we'll find out. We'll get to the picks on that game in a minute. I'll be curious to see, A, how long the grass is at Northwestern. We won't be able to get down on the field, and B, just how Nebraska handles playing its cleanest game possible. The Huskers got a recruit over the weekend.
They did, yeah. Jalen Weaver out of the Bay Area in California, Antioch High School. Kind of a man of mystery. It's kind of funny. I wrote about this for tomorrow here for Friday, but he's 6'8". His coach said he's right around 300 pounds. Real quiet guy, and as luck would have it for him, he lost his phone a couple of weeks ago. And he said his coach said it was like the best thing that could have happened to him because
really
some of the other schools that were after him, like Tennessee and some others, that wanted to make a final pitch because they knew his kind of announcement date was coming up, but no one could reach him. And in fact, when he posted on Twitter on Saturday that he committed, it was actually a coach that logged into his Twitter account for him and put it up there. So he was totally cool with kind of being away from the world. But what's interesting is that contrasts really strongly with his kind of style of play on the field. His coach called him maybe the most violent player that he's ever coached as a guy who can outrun most of the receivers on that team, who's got like 4.8 type speed from different camps, but his preference would just be to run through guys. He said if he can humiliate a guy by putting his face mask in him and just burying a blocker, he's going to do that 10 out of 10 times. So it's a guy who's really projectable in Nebraska's 3-4 scheme, I think, and his coach thought that, given his speed and physicality and his wingspan, which is like 7 feet or so, that he would make an ideal edge guy in a 3-4, kind of a defensive end, who can really set the end well, who can, as Eric Chenander talked about in the spring, has that radius that really kind of cuts down on your margin for error. If you can, wrap up a guy, a running back or a quarterback who's trying to make a turn. So he's also in kind of an interesting situation because California is just getting ready to start its high school football season. It was one of the few states that didn't have it this fall with the pandemic, so they're actually getting started in January. He'll be a big part of that team. He plays tight end for them also. And then he'll, be in Lincoln over the summer. But credit Tony Tuioti on this one. It's Nebraska's first defensive line commit in this class, and they're probably going to get another one or two before this thing's all said and done. But given his offers, a lot of other high D1 offers out there, great frame and size that you can really build on if you're Zach Duvall, and a pretty solid ad for Nebraska, as quiet as he might be off the field.
Who else is Nebraska pursuing at this point, especially at that defensive line position?
Yeah, they're in on a whole bunch of guys. I think the player that you probably need to watch closest is Tia Sevilla out of Las Vegas, Desert Pines. He, quite honestly, might already be a silent commit to Nebraska. He's kind of shut things down. publicly, and I think there's fairly good reason to believe that he would be, or maybe already is, on board with Nebraska. 6'3", 265-pound guy. I believe he's announcing at the Under Armour All-American game, January 2nd. So that's something to keep in mind. And then I think there are a handful of other guys on the line that maybe you've heard of over time. Mandela Tobin out of San Diego. That's a guy who's wanted to take visits. So we'll kind of see with him. Josh Simmons out of La Mesa, California, Helix High School. That's someone else who's kind of down to USC in Nebraska. And then Ruquan Buckley, who's been a long-time target in Nebraska. They offered him more than a year ago, probably 18 months ago. He was someone who a lot of the other commits in that class have been peer recruiting. But I know that Michigan State was another one for him, and when Michigan State beat Michigan last weekend, he had kind of pushed back his announcement deadline. So I think that's probably something to watch there. And then a handful of other names I could just throw out there. Case in Boston out of Birmingham was someone who's had Nebraska in his final handful. Jaden Jones out of Montgomery, Alabama. And then another kind of interesting one, it seems maybe more of a long shot, but Tyler Morrow out of Davenport Assumption in Iowa has a ton of offers, like upwards of 40, and Nebraska is the only one that likes him as a defensive end as opposed to offensive line for everybody else. So if that's a position he wants to play, then that could be someone who Nebraska could end up with as well. But they're in on a lot of guys right now, and they probably could still add, one or two after Weaver. So, some of these guys are announcing maybe this month or early next month. Like, some of these guys are really set on taking visits of some kind, even if it's on their own dime. So they might not, come to their conclusion until February or January maybe, but definitely a lot of irons in the fire for Nebraska there.
Is Case in Boston, back to him for a second, is he a outside linebacker or is he a defensive end for Nebraska, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think they've recruited him as a defensive end, but his measurables would lead you to think he could kind of be of that Blaze Gunnarsson ilk, who you could maybe move back to outside linebacker. I think 6'5", 240 for him. And, he's in Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Mississippi State are also in on him. Nebraska just offered him last month. So, we'll kind of have to see how that goes. He seems like maybe one of those tweener types. So, if Nebraska were to add two, and that's a guy who could go either way, that'd probably work pretty well for them.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. What we saw in the first game against Ohio State is Nebraska, using a lot of different kinds of body types in the front seven. So it wasn't just entirely giant people, right? Like they were using, they'd use a smaller DeAndre Thomas in a certain spot. Casey Rogers isn't necessarily as big as Ty Robinson. I think Robinson probably weighs 30 pounds more and is 2 or 3 inches taller. But I thought Rogers probably played better. They have a lot of different options. One thing we'll watch this week is whether Jordan Riley can play or not for Nebraska. And, of course, Jordan Riley's giant. I mean, he's enormous. He's 6'6", 330. So that'll be a thing to watch too. The recruiting is intriguing because Jalen Weaver on film is he just runs hot, man. He's fast, he's active, he's aggressive, he's athletic. You kind of wonder why he's a 3-star guy, to be honest. Why USC and UCLA haven't hit that harder, hit that recruiting trail harder, why Oregon isn't there. So I don't know if that means the consistency is an issue, or if there's qualification issues or something, because Weaver's film and his speed indicates a pretty good player. Like, again, a better player than the star rating would suggest.
Well, yeah, and academics have been something for him he's worked through, and that's especially in the last couple of months. He's really, I think that honestly, when you look back at the pandemic, that might have really helped him a lot because his coach said he was really able to buckle down and take care of a lot of that. So this could be a guy Nebraska, this could be a situation where Nebraska benefits from that.
I appreciate that intel there, Evan, because usually when I watch film, I can see if a guy is and he's not fat at all. He's slim and looks good and is really tall and can run. And I'm like, something's not right here. Like, this is a guy that, again, so to hear that there's actually a reason why and that he's worked on that and improved that is actually encouraging, I think, for Nebraska fans, because again, sometimes the tape doesn't, you have to look at the tape. I remember looking at Maurice Washington and going, there's something up, because he's way too good to be like a high 3-star. So, and I think with Rivals he was. So it was like, yeah, this isn't right. There's something up. A lot of times that's the case. So that's good to know, kind of going forward with him. That I, as I've said before, I think it's a really strong class. I really do. No fooling. I mean, I think it's, and you can say that every year. I didn't think last year's class was going to be as good. Too many late commits, too many, guys that they're picking up in November and December. And I just, that always spells iffy to me. Too many JUCO, like there's a lot of JUCO guys in it. And anytime you're doing that, you're missing on the guys you wanted out of high school. This class just looks better. I feel like the players are getting the guys they want. They got a transfer linebacker from UNI who compares very favorably to Will Honus. I think he's going to be a pretty good player here. So they got him last Friday. He's going on scholarship. They clearly intend for him to be in the rotation. And if you're bringing that guy aboard, Evan, you're probably anticipating either one or both of those senior linebackers are ready to move on and try their hand at the pro level. Because technically, of course, Honus and Miller can get their eligibility back, but they may be ready to move on. We've talked about that before, where I think you get to a point in your life where you're ready to either play professional football or you're ready to use the degree that you've earned to start making some money. Game changer might be the NIL rules changing. We'll talk about that at a later date, but that's a piece I think to watch. Let's move quickly to signing day next week. Now, there's a big signing day next week for a lot of other sports other than football. So basketball is next week. Baseball is next week. Volleyball is next week. Nebraska volleyball team is going to sign one of the greatest volleyball classes of all time. Can you just talk briefly about the baseball class and what you anticipate that to be?
Yeah, the baseball class, the main theme is in-state. I mean, they're hitting that thing really hard. Right now, they've got 13 commits. They may add to that before next week, but of those 13, 8 are in-state guys. Drew Christo is the headliner. This is a guy from Elkhorn High School who could have gone to Stanford, could have gone to Virginia. A lot of your college baseball powers, he'll be coming in. The team really felt like it addressed starting pitching with guys like Christo and CJ Hood out of Norris. They're really excited about some of the bats. Luke Jessen from Elkhorn South, Max Peterson from Lincoln Southwest are two guys that they're really excited about. So that's really the theme of this class. I think right now Perfect Game has them rated 40th nationally. And when you look at, Nebraska's last 6 or so classes, I can just rattle them off: 100 plus, 75, 100 plus, 58, 68, 93. So now they're down to 40th with the chance to probably add some guys. That's more in line with what they were when Bolt was here as an assistant, and they were in the mid-20s. So a class that they clearly intend to build this thing from within the state out. They got most of the top guys that they wanted. I think this is just the start of something of, how this blueprint's going to go forward for Nebraska. And I think it's a group that fans can be really excited about.
Yeah, thanks for rattling off those rankings. I think Erstad, I think, is a great guy and a great coach. The recruiting took an immediate jump under Will Bolt, and I think that still matters in baseball too. You have to get good baseball players, especially good athletes, guys who can hit the ball out of the park, and there just hasn't been enough of that in the last several years. So in basketball, I'll rattle this off quickly. Nebraska's going to sign 2 for sure. They might sign 3 if they get 5-star Bryce McGowan. I don't have a lot to add there. It's hard to say what that kid's going to do, and he doesn't have to do it now either. But obviously his older brother Trey plays here, and they're just going to have to figure it out. Nebraska, LSU, Georgia, Florida State, where he was committed, there in the mix. There's a lot of different options, but he'll have to figure that out. He's a unique and interesting player, Bryce McGowens. I would not describe him like a lot of 5 stars. I think he can do a lot of things on the court, including play a great defense, and he can get to the cup, and he can defend. He's not the best shooter you'll ever see yet, but interesting player who just makes you better in a lot of different ways. He's not going to score 35 per se, but he could score 10 and get 5 rebounds and 2 steals. He's like a smaller version of an Isaiah Roby. Although, we won't set the ceiling that high either. For McGowens, it'll come down to who can develop him well enough to get to the NBA. And I think Fred Hoiberg's got a great pitch there. Fred can say, I was the best 3-point shooter in the NBA when I was in there, and that's what you need. You have everything else. Now let's teach you how to shoot the 3, and I'll help you do that. And so I think Nebraska's got a really good pitch there. The 2 guys are going to sign. Wilhelm Breedenbach is a center out of Mater Dei. He's got range. He can shoot, the 3-pointer pretty well. He's got some touch around the hoop. 10 feet in. Pretty good defender. Can block shots. Seems like a heady kid. He'll fit into the program nicely. He's probably a front court guy. I don't know that he's, Lat Man, I think, is slated to be more of a, can play in the front court, can play out on the floor behind the 3-point line. I think Breedenbach's going to be a little bit more inside the arc and in the paint. So they may need to put a little weight on him, but there's that. And then Kai Tominaga from Ranger College in Texas. And he is a 3-point shooter, probably the best recruit out of the nation of Japan. But he went to Ranger College to kind of, obviously build up his skill set. And he's a really good 3-point shooter. He's got an interesting stroke. It works. The ball goes in the hoop. But there's things for him to work on there. But he's an unbelievably good shooter. And you can just tell that he knows how to shoot in transition. He knows how to shoot on the pull-up. And he also has the ability to kind of shoot the goofy 3. I was watching the game on YouTube last week, I think, with him in it, and he can shoot the awkward 3. And I think that's part of what makes a great 3-point shooter a great 3-point shooter is you're able to kind of shoot one that doesn't look like most people would make, but your shot goes in. So there's that. We'll see if they add Bryce McGowan to that list. Nebraska women's basketball team is going to have a really good signing class as well. They did well. I think they needed to do well because they needed to do well. They've lost some players. They're probably going to have a kind of a rough. I don't know if rough year is the right word. I think going 500 would be good for them. They've lost a lot, so that they're going to have to kind of rebuild it a little. I think they'll play harder this year. I think they'll play better defense. I think they'll have, what's the right word? Improved chemistry, if that's the right word to use. But they're going to sign a pretty good class too. It's kind of headlined by Allison Widener, the gal out of Humphrey St. Francis. She's a big piece of that class. And then Kendall Coley, who is out of Minneapolis, essentially St. Louis Park High, but it's Minneapolis. She is the best friend of the number 1 recruit in Nebraska's volleyball class, incidentally. So Kendall Coley is a really, really good player. They're going to sign Constantine Popa's daughter, who's a giant player, really tall. And then they're going to get Kendall Moriarty, who's a defensive specialist, really good defender out of Illinois. So it's a good class. They may be adding another one in there, but it's a pretty strong class. We'll fill it all in next week when it's time. Oh, I guess Alexis Markowski is the other one that they'll be getting, the local Lincoln Pius ex-workhorse, who's the daughter of Andy Markowski. I really like Alexis's game. She's very, very impressive. So let's move to our picks because we got to get going.
Let's do it.
All right. You're up 3 now.
Hey-o.
You went 8-4 last week. I went 5-7. So I got to find a way to get back.
Uh-oh.
You ready?
Let's do it.
Boise, BYU at Boise State. I'm going to take Boise State.
Yeah, same.
Michigan, Indiana.
That's a really interesting one. I just can't pick Indiana. I got to go Michigan.
All right. I'm going Michigan, too. I already submitted my pick, so I can't change. Arizona State, USC.
Arizona State.
Okay. I'm going to take USC. Here's a good one. Liberty at Virginia Tech. This is Liberty's game of the year. Liberty at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Virginia Tech.
I'm taking Liberty.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Michigan State at Iowa. I'll take Iowa.
Man. Yeah, Iowa.
Florida, Georgia. I'm going to take Florida.
You in Georgia.
And I never take Florida in that game. Better quarterback. Oklahoma State at K-State. K-State really struggled last week. I'll take Okie State.
Same here.
Stanford, Oregon.
Oh, yeah, the Pac-12's playing football.
That's right.
How about that?
Yeah.
Oregon.
Oregon. I think it's going to be Oregon, too. I don't know what Stanford has up its sleeve, but whatever. All right, the toilet bowl. Minnesota, Illinois. 2 worst teams in the Big Ten. I'll take Minnesota.
Man. That's 2 terrible defenses.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, Minnesota, I guess. Yeah.
Tennessee, Arkansas. I think Sam Pittman, I think he didn't even work for Tennessee. Anyway, like recently. Thought. Maybe I'm wrong.
Nice start. Tennessee.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, incidentally, this game is at Arkansas.
It is. They've cooled a bit, Arkansas has.
We cooled. Tennessee for Evan. I'm going to take Arkansas. Tennessee has quarterback issues that I don't think are easy to resolve. They need a new quarterback because the guy they got he's just about done. Clemson, Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting one this time.
It is. The Trevor Lawrence isn't playing bowl.
Uh-huh.
He's gonna be on the sidelines under a jacket. They'll be watching him the whole game.
I still think Clemson finds a way. Notre Dame doesn't win these kind of games.
Yeah, I think Clemson's going to win too. I do. I actually thought they played pretty well against Boston College. And finally, Nebraska, Northwestern.
Oh, man. Well, I'm gonna channel my inner Chris Hetty here and say, Nebraska just hasn't proven it. So until they prove that they can play some mistake-free football and kind of shed some of the habits of the past, I can't assume that they're going to. So I think Northwestern wins, and it's going to be another really close one.
Evan going with the purple. I'm going to pick Nebraska. I think they're going to pull it out. I think it's going to be a great game, and I think Nebraska is going to have just one more point. But I think Nebraska pulls it out in Evanston. But I agree. Close game, very tight. Nebraska has to play well. I think they will play well, and I'll take the Huskers. All right. I think that's our shortest podcast in a while, and it is over. Thanks to everyone who listened. Stay safe, be safe, and enjoy the game on Saturday. For Evan Bland, I'm Sam McKewon. Thanks a lot.